evening, everyone, and welcome to the summit. Once again, I'm your host, Martina Abera, and today's episode is going to be delving into the findings of Rwanda's 7th Integrated Household Living Conditions Survey, widely known as the EICV7, which was recently released by the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. Now, the report paints an encouraging picture, also highlighting over 1.5 million Rwandans who were lifted out of poverty in the past 7 years, despite the ripple effects of global economic shocks as well as domestic challenges. Well, we're also going to be exploring some of these findings and what they mean for Rwanda's development trajectory, how poverty is measured, and what this tells us about the policy decisions that have worked and those that may need some reinforcement. More importantly, we'll be able to look ahead what's needed to sustain and accelerate this progress that has been achieved over the past 7 years, and which areas are still requiring deeper intervention. Now, to help us unpack all of this, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Ivan Murenzi, who is the Director General of the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. You're welcome, Mr. Ivan.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and last but not least, we also have Mr. Teddy Kabiruka, who is an economic policy analyst who brings a wider lens on how data translates into real-world impact through governance and policy. You're welcome, Mr. Teddy.
Thank you for having me too.
Yes, without further ado, let's dive into the conversation that we have. The EICV7 was released a few days ago. Now, Mr. Ivan, Director General, if you could first unpack for us what is poverty for someone who might not be understanding the exact meaning of that word, and how does NISR measure poverty?
Yeah, so the EICV is a survey. It's a tool, you would say it's a tool which we use to collect information, which information then we analyze in various ways. And one of the main ways is a measure of poverty, and I'll come back to that. But maybe I could just, for the background of our listeners, explain this tool. The EICV, as I said, is a survey which we do every 3 years. Every 3 years we measure to see how conditions are, socio-economic conditions of Rwandans, and that's very important. And it's been done for the last 23 years. And one of the main things we measure is poverty. So what's poverty? Poverty, you would say, is a condition in which an individual, a person, is not able to afford basic needs of life. And the basic needs, the first main basic need of life is if you cannot afford the basic food. And I will explain what basic food is. But we need food, we need other things in life. So when we say basic food, to start with the component of food, that means you cannot afford, or you do not consume food which is sufficient for you to be able to work. So you are eating maybe one meal or less quantities which are not in proportion to what you need in your body. And it's more about the quantity that's needed to give you an energy to work. It's not necessarily to do with a variety of food, but at least the basic is that. And there's a way we determine that, because there are scientific ways which are used by nutritionists to determine that an adult or an adult equivalent, could be a child, a person by various ages, how much food do they need? So what we do is, knowing those quantities of food that someone needs as energy, we are able to quantify it and give it value in terms of money. And then we are able to say, if this is what you need per day, in a year, what would that equate to? And then we are able to determine the value of the food someone should be consuming in a given period of time, which is a year. And that value, once we determine it, when we are collecting data, we look at how people are consuming and seeing how much they are consuming. If people's consumption is less than that value, in this case is about 360,000. If people's consumption is less than that, then those people are poor. And in this case, they are extremely poor because they cannot afford the basic food.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, there's food, there are other things. And then we also look at the value of those other things. And for most people, the poor, food accounts for about 68%. So the other percentage of things also we see the value. If someone cannot afford altogether food and other food, the basic needs, then they are poor. So they may not be extremely poor, they can afford the food, but what they can afford is not sufficient to cover other things of life. So they are still poor.
Yeah.
So that's why we end up saying that there are those who are extremely poor and there are those who are poor. Those who are extremely poor lack even the basic of food. Those who are poor might have afforded some food, they afford the basic food, but they don't afford the other things. So that's how we determine those who are poor.
Yeah, thank you for that definition. It also provides some sort of clarity. Now, as we dive into the main topic for today's discussion, could you please unpack some of the key findings of the EICV7 survey?
Yes. So the main key finding is the revelation that poverty in Rwanda has reduced from 39.8% of the population who are poor, that's as of 2017, to 27.4%. So that's a change of 12.4%, a decrease of 12.4%, which equates to 1.5 million Rwandans. That's one of the main findings. So in the last 7 years, from 2017, when we last measured, to 2024, that's the change. Now, earlier I said we do it every 3 years, and you might wonder, you're talking about 7 years. It's because in 2020, while we were doing the same survey, we were not able to complete the survey because of COVID. This is quite a unique survey, Martina, that we have to visit households several times and have to do it for a whole year so that we capture various seasons of people's life.
Yeah.
And during COVID-1, we didn't have that ability because of lockdown. So we didn't complete the survey in 2020. So that's why there was that gap. So anyhow, I was saying that the poverty, when we last measured it and now, has reduced by 12.4%, which is quite a substantial decrease. And as I said, we look at poverty, but we also look at other socioeconomic conditions. Electricity, access to electricity, that's very important. Access to water, education, use of phones, household amenities, what kind of households do people live in? We look at what's the floor, and other basic services, education as well, the levels of education of people. For most indicators, there has been improvement, and we can go into the numbers later, but there have been significant improvement. And the improvement is at national level. So for example, for electricity now we're at 72%, coming from 34%, so almost more than double. And what's interesting is that the improvement is even more when it comes to the poor. So there's that national change when you look at the national level for electricity. But when you say, how has the change happened for rural, because that's where most poor people live, you see even bigger change for rural, that is, those who didn't have electricity in the rural areas, and I can quickly check the number, and those who now have, there's a much bigger change. For example, in rural areas, access to electricity moved from 25% to 65%. That's more than triple. And that's very important, because you want to see that these services reaching those who need it most. And another way to look at it is when we look at access to services by quintiles. Quintiles is a way you organize the population by their levels. So quintile 1 are the poor, quintile 2 is the other level. So you divide the population in 5 groups. quintile 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 would be the well-off in the society. So now when you look at access to electricity, you are saying, yes, I see the change at national level, but how about rural urban? So rural, I said, from 25 to 65. Urban also, there was an increase from 76 to 88. So some increase, not the same as rural. Now, when you look at it in quintiles, and you say the very poor, the poor quintile 1, where were they in 2017? The access was at 9%. 9% households, poor households, had access to electricity in 2017. The number now, as of 2024, 53%. Wow. So more than a half. So that's why the biggest gains have been achieved.
In terms of access to electricity.
In terms of, so the message here is that for all key socioeconomic conditions, access to electricity, water, education, funds, there is a national change, a change at national level, holistically, but even the change is more to those who are poor. Yeah.
Thank you very much, DG Ivan. Now, Mr. Teddy, after hearing some of the statistics that the Director General of NISR has detailed for us from an economic standpoint, what do these results from the EICV7 tell us about the structure as well as direction of Rwanda's economy over the past 7 years?
I would say the number we are celebrating now, it's like a picture of what we've seen over the years, because apart from the EICV being a survey done once, but every year there are so many other publications. We see how the GDP grow, we see how the employment rate keep changing, you know, we see export, import, we see the worst statistic we have of inflation, you know, we see it affects our population, it affects our daily life, but we see so many other information which again come and justify what is happening. So I would say I was not so much surprised, because, you know, you could predict what is happening, but something very important to notice that, okay, if we've made this progress, you know, in terms of, let's say, access to electricity, access to water, so how is the population increasing their productivity? Because infrastructure, basic infrastructure are there. How are they using the same infrastructure to leverage on them and then produce more? That's where the big effort should be geared to, especially for the implementing agencies. Here I refer to some technical ministries like Ministry of Agriculture. If we are saying we are increasing access to water, how are we going to use the water for irrigation, for instance? If we are talking about electricity, we are talking about the usage of mobile phones. You know, numbers are quite impressive, because if you see the mobile phone penetration, the network and the usage is very high. But how people are they using those facilities to increase their productivity? That's another step, I think.
Yeah, and how do you think that can be able to be achieved in terms of these ministries, companies utilizing some of these infrastructures or some of these things that are of need for them?
Well, I would say these EICV findings, it's a tool for planning now. We are lucky that numbers can tell us where we need more effort, but also we need to use them in a very strategic way. Let's say if we are talking about increasing our agriculture productivity, we know we have a very big challenge in terms of productivity, in terms of price of the commodity. We even saw when we were, you know, NSR was calculating the cost of living, they had to readjust for the previous year so that we can compare the two EICV 2017 and this 2024, because price has changed. And when you see over time, our inflation has consistently grown, which means we need to produce more so that we can contain inflation at a certain level, within the reasonable margin. And if we want to increase our productivity, then we need to produce more. We need to invest more in productivity. Agriculture is one of the sectors where I would say we need investment, heavy investment. Much more need to be done in terms of industrialization. You know, if you see our balance of payment, we have a deficit. We import more than we export. Which means we still need, we'll be putting pressure on our foreign currency. The dollar value will keep increasing, and then we still have the inflation going up. That's another policy issue to be addressed over time.
Thank you very much. Back to you, DG. Now, in past surveys such as EICV7 back in 2017, poverty was measured based on a person's per capita consumption falling below a set poverty line. At the time, the overall poverty line was set at 159,375 francs per adult, which is equivalent per year, based on the January 2014 prices. Extreme poverty was also defined using a lower threshold, which was 105,064 per adult per year, reflecting the cost of food, providing minimum calories without accounting for non-food needs. Now, if you could tell us, why is it necessary to change the way poverty is measured compared to the previous surveys like the one in EICV7?
One is that since we are talking about well-being of people, we have to reflect the conditions, the prevailing conditions. We have to reflect the prevailing conditions. So, for example, when we say the poor, how do we identify the poor? As you mentioned, we look at the cost of the basic needs, which is the poverty line, basically. The poverty line is about knowing that cost of the basic needs. So, for example, when I said it has two components, food and non-food. Non-food includes shelter, transport, clothing, education, health expenses. All those are other basic needs. So if you look at that cost plus the food, which we are saying these are the basics someone needs, and comes to, now we are saying 560,000 per year per person. It's adult equivalent. Then if you are saying it's that money, it's because that's the cost of things. It has moved from 156,000, as you said. So over time, as Ted was mentioning, inflation has been happening. The way things were costing 7 years ago is not the same as they are costing now. So that's why the value changes, and that's why we have to adjust. But in this particular survey, we made other key changes. Other key changes are mainly in two parts. One is to reflect the conditions of how Rwandans live, and I'll give a few examples. So way back when we started doing this survey, we had a situation where most Rwandans eat food at home. So I'm saying this is way back 2001. Actually, the survey, this kind of survey started even where it has ever been done in 1983. Most people would eat at home. Today, in the urban areas, a number of people eat outside of home, whether for lunch, whether for breakfast, or even dinner. So we have to reflect that. We have to, when we are saying what people are consuming, we have to be careful to ask, what did you eat at home? What did you eat outside of home? For every person of the household, even children. Now children eat at school. You know, the school feeding program for government. So we are trying to reflect the realities of how people live. That's one motivation. The other motivation is improvements at global level and regional level in terms of how you measure the things. In statistics, we are always refining because we work with estimates. In statistics, we work with estimates. So we are always improving, refining our estimate. Even a 0.5 refinement is worth it. So the two reasons of changes in how people live and improvements at global region level when it comes to how you compute things have been also reasons why we have measured. Actually, for some people, when they look at our report, you realize that for us to be able to compare the poverty between 2017 and 2024, we had to make another recalculation of the poverty that we had in 2017 so that we can compare. We had to use the same approach that we used in 2024, recompute the numbers in 2017 so that then we make sure they change. So to answer your question, we are trying to reflect the conditions, we are trying to make our estimates better, and that's the reason we have to always improve things. But when we do that, we communicate it, so we have a detailed methodological note that we explain what we did, someone to be able to understand.
Yeah.
But as we're talking about the findings, we talked about generally things improving. But as Teddy mentioned, there are still areas of improvement. It doesn't mean that everything is going well.
Yeah.
So even for water, we say improved water. Households Rwandans who have access to improved water, there's a change, positive change. We are now at about 90%. But some people, about 21%, have to walk long distances to access that water. So the water is being used, but for some households, there's distance. So we look at those dynamics. We look at also satisfaction. Is the water reliable? So there is room for improvement there. When we look at education, young people, 14 to 16 years, who have completed primary, we find that the number is about 42%. 42% only have completed primary. That means either one, they are still in primary, two, they have gone out of primary. So that's an area of dropout. Yeah. So there's still work to be done around different things. When we talk of use of clean cooking fuel, we're just at 5%, though we've moved from 1%. So there's a good change from 1 at national level to 5%, more in the urban area, where it's now about 17%, but clean cooking fuel is key for the good of the environment. Here we mean electricity or gas. So if it's still a very small percentage of the population, we still have a long way to go. So on the whole, there are so many socio-economic indicators that have improved, but there are some where we still have a way to go.
Yeah, you did mention some of these areas of improvement, and also what more can be done, because at times we can see the statistics showing that provision has increased, but also accessibility is really important. Like you talked about having to go long distances to access the water. Yes, it's available, but at what cost? So highlighting that is very important. Thank you for that. Moving back to you, Mr. Teddy, looking at the regional development, how does economic inclusion vary across the country, and what strategies can help ensure a more balanced growth?
Well, if you see these statistics, actually, the urban versus rural, and then the distribution of districts, you can see the difference, the variation, actually. Yeah. If you see, I would say, the poverty rate, the average, you see there are so many districts which are even much higher than the average, which means if there would be replanning or reallocation of resources, priority should be given to those regions where the poverty rate is very high. If we are talking about 27-point-something%, some of them are in 40s. So you can imagine if you have 40% of the population which is poor, close to the half of the population. If we are talking about some indicators where we have 42% of children who are transitioning from primary to secondary, so it means the future generation, you'll have like half of the population not educated. You know, some of the numbers even worse when you have like 9% of the population not educated, without any education. And those are the people who need to be fed, who need to be, you know, catered for, who are supposed to be productive, basically. So if you have a portion of population of people who are not productive, it means those people are burden to others. So by looking at the numbers, if one person, let's say the 1.5 million of people who lifted out of poverty, if within their household they have other people who are not productive, it means they are burden for them. So in the long run, they can even pull them down. So it's very, very important for a policy to dive deep, go in details, understand what are the drivers of this poverty. Why do we still have a high rate of unemployment? Why do we still have some region which has a very high proportion of population? Is it because we can relate to some other factors like education, access to education in those areas? Is it because of our productivity level in agriculture is very low, so that we can invest? So there is need to look at different parameters, not one single indicator to define the entire economy. Because region varies, opportunities are different by region, even challenges as well.
And as an economic policy analyst, could you help us understand some of the drivers behind poverty reduction and improvements in well-being?
I would say in these 7 years we've been seeing a lot of heavy investment in terms of for infrastructure led by the government. That's we need to acknowledge. There also has been so many initiatives to support the private sector. We saw different districts, you know, like trying to have like industrial zone. We saw so many factories opening up here and there. There has been subsidies in agriculture. It's something also to notice because agriculture is also a very big driver of poverty or economic development. And these last 7 years, there has been a lot. And good enough, even during COVID, when we were under the lockdown, agriculture sector was doing well. So those are the drivers of development, but still there is we need more investment to drive more the development.
Thank you very much. Mr. DG, you did talk about the methodological changes, but if we could dive into that more. According to NISR, the protocols of collecting data and the nature and scope of the questions were relatively similar from EICV7, which was back in 1999, all the way to 2001. Reflecting on the evolving best practices in poverty measurement, a number of methodological changes were made for EICV7, and as well as how it was indicated. What methodological changes were introduced in the EICV7 that led to the revision of the 2017 poverty rate of 38.2%?
So in statistics, there's a way you do things, and you have to keep doing it that way so that you compare. So for a while, we were noticing that there are some things we need to change, but we wanted to take a moment and make changes at once, because what that means is you start a new series. You start like new series of what you'll be measuring. So from way back, as you rightly put it, from 2001, the methodology and how we are measuring poverty was by and large consistent over the years for the last 6 rounds, from 2001 to 2017. And we noticed that, as I said, the way Rwandans live have changed, so we need to capture various things, various dynamics. So add more questions that reflect how people live. 2, we were also noticing that there are areas in how we compute things which have been improved and tested globally. So we work with partners at global level, the World Bank. The World Bank has a big technical group of poverty analysts. And they do study how things evolve in different countries, and also the United Nations Stats Division. So these experts are always looking at ways to improve how we measure things. And so with those suggestions of changes, we tested them, and we're looking at how they relate to our context. Some are quite technical, that may be challenging to explain them here, but I would say there's what we call the calorie threshold, which we changed from 2,500 to 2,400, meaning the calories someone needs, the way they are calculated, it depends on how your population is in various activities. Those who are in agriculture, those who are in services, in industry, their calorie needs could be different because of their difference in their activity levels. So for example, someone in farming, the energy they use is different from what Teddy needs when he's just seated in his office. So you look at the population and you look at the way they live, and you know the numbers of population where they are. So you are able to come up with a more refined estimate, which is not just a blanket number that you could just apply to the whole population. The other things is, as we say, is the poverty line, which we changed. The other things is how we compute some other detailed things. All that is what we did now. Now that we have done it, we'll not do other changes. We'll wait for several other years because we want to compare. In the next round of EICV 2017, 2018, 2028, the way we will do it will be exactly the way we did this one, for us to be able to compare. If you allow, there's something you asked which I would want to compliment on, around when we talk of conditions improving, what causes that?
Yeah.
Or how does that happen? It happens as a country is in its journey of development. So there's a number we usually publish every quarter, GDP growth. That's something common to everyone, GDP growth. So if the economy is growing, that means there are activities happening. There's construction activities happening, whether big projects, whether small projects. Even as we speak today, there are people building, there are people renovating their households. So that's creating employment, plus other areas in services. When activity is happening, activity creates jobs. When activities happen, activities create jobs. So people's earning gets better. Probably where you were at 7 years ago is not where you are at today, on each individual level. And when employment is created, people earn. Or even in agriculture, as Teddy mentioned, if someone is able to use fertilizers, use improved seeds, the productivity is going to go higher. And so they will earn something better. So with better earnings or improved earnings, better consumption and better well-being. Plus, as services reach people, so for example, someone didn't have electricity, now they have electricity. Before, because they didn't have electricity, if they want to do a basic activity like grinding peanuts or cassava leaves, they will spend an hour pounding, okay? But because of electricity, they will use a small motor. In 15 minutes, it would have done the job. Maybe that small motor is accessed by 10 households. So that improves someone's life because of access of. We have not talked about lighting helping in education, plus other things. So that's how, as economy improves, as access to services improves, that's how it reaches people and improves their lives. I just wanted to add that.
No, very, very important. Thank you for that. Back to you, Mr. Teddy. And this question, feel free to pitch in as well, Director General. While the numbers do show progress, which we are grateful for, what are the underlying risks or even economic vulnerabilities that could reverse these gains if not adjusted?
That's a very tricky question. Well, I will start with the geopolitics, which is beyond our control.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we know the region we are living in and our transaction, you know, being business-wise, being a movement of people. So the geopolitics can really affect our economic development. When I say geopolitics, it covers security, it covers trade, it covers exchange, movement of people. That's a very big threat. Two, the climate. You know, we are facing a world where things are no longer the way they used to be with the climate change. You know, we had some floods some years ago. You know, the whole district were almost losing half of the production. You know, those climate changes is something.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Infrastructure. We you know, even we lost people during. Was it 2 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, it was during.
2023 around May.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are like high risk and underlying factor to put in our parameters of control as we are on that journey of development. The other thing is the population variable. Much as we can see population as an opportunity, but population growth can also be a risk. Because I'm just projecting some of the numbers from the EICV, you know, the transition from primary school to secondary, where we are growing a very massive number of population which is not skilled. So over time, that population can be a risk. Instead of being productive, they can be a burden to the economy. So those are like key elements to consider as we are moving to the next level of planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on that?
I think Teddy has outlined the key risks for environment, other shocks, like, pandemics also could be said in terms of affecting progress. And you know, when we say those shocks, they could, one, cause damage or reverse gains, or shocks, challenges, risks could stall. So they would affect in potentially two ways.
Yeah.
One, they reverse or stall a progress which was being achieved. And I think in planning now, there's consideration, there's recognition of those risks. So you cannot just assume that things will just sail as you have planned. You've got to factor in those things and actually put considerations how you manage. You can't completely avoid, but how you manage. And I think that's within the NST2, government recognizes those inherent challenges, limitations, but it is what it is. It is the world we live in. I think it's more to recognize, plan for, and always try to be prepared to manage those risks. But you can't stop from pursuing the journey of development that you want to pursue.
Yeah. Can you be able to reflect, if you can, some of the areas of concern or stagnation that the survey did reveal, and what does that tell us about emerging vulnerabilities?
Generally, when you look at the findings across various areas, various socioeconomic indicators, I would say that for most there's progress, tangible, some little progress. Where I would say an area which would have reversed is people's appreciation of access to water. So we do ask a question around satisfaction. And we saw that there was a decrease in the level of satisfaction from what it was in 2017 to what it is in 2024. And partly, satisfaction is how water is easily accessible. Two, probably also how it's reliable. Is it always available? Or there are moments when it's not available? And probably that's one that really quickly comes to my mind in terms of reversal, now going backwards, people's appreciation of access to electricity. But there could be other things which, as I mentioned, have not necessarily made big gains in improvement, like education. It's more to the relevant authorities, and that they are aware. These findings came actually when the Minister of Education had recently published what they call the Education Yearbook, which the things that are indicated in that Education Yearbook almost align with also what we found, which is still many areas of improvement in terms of access, in terms of quality, at various levels.
Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Teddy. As Rwanda continues to eye its Vision 2050 goals, what key economic shifts or reforms should be considered to ensure the poverty reduction continues and becomes even more resilient?
I would say, using the same numbers we are discussing now, I think the effort made in the last 7 years has yielded results. I would say there is much to learn from this journey of 7 years. Replicate them. Where we had like a very limited gain to change the strategies. If you see. For instance, one of the big challenges has been the inflation. I keep repeating it because it's a very it's an indicator which touches everyone actually, and it even take you back if you compare to what people are making as an earning. So more effort to control inflation need to be done in this coming periods.
In what manner? How?
Well, for it to be controlled, you need to increase productivity. Because everything starts with what you produce. Because what you produce is what you put on the market, and then you satisfy the demand. So if the production is not enough, whatever scenario you can imagine, you will still need to pay more. And if we increase the productivity, we'll be creating jobs for people, basically. So we are like solving two issues by investing once. So increasing the agriculture productivity, you deal with the pricing, we also create jobs for people. We are very much aware that agriculture is still absorbing 68% of the population. So if we want this population to be productive, if we want them to project them in the future, we know the NST2 is also have a very big portion of people to be off-farm activities. That's an area where investment need to be done. And that connects exactly with what we were saying related to the skill development. If a big portion of the population should be transitioned from agriculture to service sector, we need to invest more in skill development and then build a very wide ecosystem to allow people to be in that service industry. It's not easy as we could imagine, but it's something possible. It has been proven that people can transition gradually, not overnight, but it's possible.
It's doable.
Yes.
Just on the point of inflation, Teddy kept referring to it. It's a real one because, as we said, food is a basic need. Everyone has to eat. So if the availability of food keeps fluctuating, or some seasons it's available, some seasons not available, then that's when you see inflation. So for example, around 2022, the year 2022, 2023, agriculture was not doing well. We had a growth of about 0. Growth means if you compare production of that period and the production of the same period in the previous year, there's no increment, yes. There's no increase. And one would say, why does it matter? It matters because population is always increasing.
Yes.
Population does not stop. Population in Rwanda grows at about 2.3% each year. Each year, the population grows at about 2.3%. Now, if population is growing at about 2.3%, agriculture needs to grow at about double that value. Agriculture should not be growing at 2, 3. No, it should be growing at least at 5. Why? Because the produce that comes out, some of it will be consumed by people, some of it will be consumed by animals, some will be exported. You can never totally stop export. Some goes to industries for processing into other things. And actually some is also lost in the whole chain.
Value chain,
Some can be lost. So I just was building on his point to say it matters therefore that there's combined effort across all stakeholders. It's not a responsibility for only Ministry of Agriculture. It's for the whole stakeholders. How we ensure that productivity of agriculture is always going to another level, so that there's more stability in availability of produce. If it's stable, inflation does not fluctuate so much, go so high. Inflation will always be there. There's nothing like you have 0 inflation. That's also not good, by the way. There's some reasonable level of inflation, which could be between 5 to 8, not more than 10. That's okay each year. But when you go over 10, that's not good, because it erodes people's capabilities. That's to say, someone is earning a given amount of money per month. That money is not changing every month, it's not changing every year. If prices keep going high, they are limited, they are constrained in terms of the same amount of money being able to cover all their needs, including especially food. And so yes, I agree that that's a key area that we need to keep focusing on, and that would be so meaningful in how the country progresses.
And in your view, how should policymakers be able to use the EICV7 data to inform Rwanda's Vision 2050 objectives?
Yeah, so in Rwanda, we've progressed very well when it comes to availability of information, statistics. We have statistics across many sectors, like we're talking about prices, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about employment, we're talking about trade. Now we're talking about conditions of living. Next year we'll be talking about health. Information is very important. Availability of timely information is very important in you being able to not only assess your progress, but more importantly, understand where you still have challenges and go deeper, and then understand the real root causes. So for example, here we're talking about some districts which still have high levels of poverty. We're going to go into detailed discussions with the relevant authorities, like Ministry of Local Government, like provinces. One will be unpacking some of these numbers. So when we release findings like this, we do not only stop at the report publishing and launching and just this interview. No, we go into other specific conversations with the relevant authorities so that they understand these numbers, they ask questions, they clarify. So we'll be having discussions at provincial levels, we'll be having discussions with different ministries to just unpack these findings. And you triangulate all the various information you have labor, agriculture, to basically get more refined picture of issues, of what has to be done, of the magnitude of the challenge. And this is a culture that has been building over time in Rwanda, and it becomes very meaningful because for a country with limited resources, with limited resources yet serious ambitions, you need even to be more refined also in your interventions, and so evidence becomes very relevant.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. As we maybe come to the conclusion of the show, Mr. Teddy, as more of like a wake-up call, which sectors or economic policies do you believe, first of all, maybe played a role in lifting the over 1.5 million Rwandans out of poverty, or can continue to play a role and do their part in terms of that being the case in the future, increasing this number even in the future?
It will be very hard to single down one standalone sector, but it has been a combination of different initiatives, driving to these numbers. I think that's what I can say, and you can see it from different angles, being the household living condition, like the poverty index, the education sector, the health sector, you can see different sectors contributed, and their numbers went high. But moving forward, I think we need more focus now, because as we are getting fewer numbers of people under the extreme poverty level. Those, I would say, those are manageable numbers. We can intensively invest in that portion of population, at least lift them from extreme poverty to poverty. And then, because the development journey, if you have people who are in extreme poverty, basically it's very hard to count on them in productivity. They consume even the little produced by others. But if you can lift them, get them to the certain level, then we can expect more return on the investment done on them. That's one. Two, I wish in this next phase we are entering in, a private sector need to be more vibrant than it was in the previous years. Because this was not a typical survey for private sector contribution, but you can see it when you see the level of employment and employability. It's not that big, not that impressive, because we still have a very high rate of unemployment, and more so in the rural area. So I think moving forward, it's an area where a government need to scrutinize the contribution of private sector, put some incentive on how they can better invest more, create more jobs, support young entrepreneurs, so that at least in the next 7 years, we can see a very low unemployment rate, especially among the youth.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And over to you, DG. As the report from the EICV7 was released, and we got to understand the findings, but what could you have hoped that Rwandans in general, all different sectors, could be able to pick from this report? And also, could you also briefly reflect on the importance of data-driven policy in terms of shaping Rwanda's development agenda?
Yeah, I think these findings, these indicators, these statistics, a picture situation, a snapshot of where we stand as a country. And when we say country, it's me and you at the end of the day. So it's a moment for us to reflect. When we say access to electricity, it's at 72%. The other day I was talking to one of our drivers at work because he followed the event. And he told me, by the way, the things you were talking about today, actually when I look at things in my village, he comes from Nyamagabe. He says, yeah, I have water now at my home. And because I have water, people around me can come to fetch water at 10 francs per jerrycan. But at least they access that clean water.
Yeah.
So he was basically reflecting on how that has had an effect on him. He has some other small activities, economic activities, doing like poultry and the like. So these numbers are to give us a picture of how we stand and a moment for all of us to reflect. But two, also to realize that the journey we still have for our development, when the country progresses, it's meaningful for all of us, no doubt. And so to also reflect in terms of what does it mean in how we progress as a country, the things that we are saying still need improvement or progress is not only just the government. As Ted mentioned, it's for everyone, it's for the private sector as well, because once those progresses continue to happen in education, so they need to invest in education.
Yeah.
It's not only the government that will make all the necessary contributions when it comes to schools and best teachers and all that. No, the private sector can also play a role. So this information is a snapshot for all of us to reflect. And I encourage people to really read this information. I know our reports can be a bit technical, but there is a summary. There's this small booklet which summarizes some of the key indicators. It's on our website. But also there's a clear report that summarizes, and we have so many thematic reports. We have about 11 reports. We have one for youth, we have for gender, we have for education, we have for agriculture. Literally all sectors can see themselves. I encourage people to read reports. In terms of policy, as I mentioned, it's already happening. We have started already conversations of one, how these findings help in re-strategizing for government. So government Ministry of Finance and Planning is going to be so much using these numbers, but even other sectors will have further conversations or discussions with various leaders, including the private sector and civil society, whenever they reach out to us to explain further.
Yes. Thank you very much to both of you. This has been very insightful, and thank you once again to our viewers for joining us here on the summit, where we were unpacking the findings of the EICV7 survey that was released. And we've seen how Rwanda continues to beat the odds, but also heard that there is more to do in terms of sustain and deepen the growth that has been achieved, all the way from data policy and from households to national strategy. And this is all a collective journey that we have had and will continue to be a part of. And a big thank you to our guest, Director General Ivan Murenzi, for being here. Thank you once again, Mr. Teddy Kaberuka, for giving us that economic perspective and for your invaluable insights overall. And thank you once again to our viewers for always tuning in and being part of this conversation that definitely makes a difference. And until next time, my name is Martina Abera. Stay tuned and let's keep joining the conversation all the way and always in the summit.
Application ya RBA yahageze urayibona ute nta cyoroshye nkabyo